G'day. I thought I'd continue on with this perception and reality rant. Just having a little bit of a reflection before about the double slit experiment, a physics experiment, where when an object was observed or it changed its behaviour, which started all this quantum physics stuff, which is actually just old witchcraft, really, brought forward. It was old knowledge. It's been known forever, especially by occultists and brotherhoods and those sort of people. They use it extensively as part of their training of observing the object and changing its behaviour. Sound familiar? So, perception for me as a child, looking in from my innocence, was that I was brought into a situation of apparent acclaim and esteem, and I was living by the water and in a pretty nice house, and I was very lucky, according to everyone else, including my parents, that I would have all this. And this was the perception I was offered, also by my peers at the time. A little bit of jealousy in perception. And my reality was that none of this mattered. I wasn't really, I was like a guest in that house. I was woken up every morning brutally if I went to sleep at all. I was woken up or alarmed nearly every morning to my father ripping the blankets off and pulling my feet on the floor and making me sit up straight away, saying feet on the floor. Or my mother would be ruffling through my drawers and picking up my laundry, saying, "I'm up, why shouldn't you be?" And so my perception was a little bit skewed around what I was receiving in information and what I was feeling. As I said, the reality is that I'd seen enough by 3 years old, and I was ready to check out. I wanted to die, and I was looking for ways to do so. And that was what caused the big injury with my father, because the reality is that I was trying to goad him into killing me, because I knew he could and wouldn't have minded to, and wouldn't have taken much for him to lose his shit and make the tragic slip. So yeah, when he followed through with that, and of course then we have the family doctor, who's obviously a brother in the brotherhood of the hoods, or the hoodless, who would know. So that was the reality for me. Then I don't understand how people couldn't see it in me, apart from people's want not to pry into some high-end lawyer's business. He was known as the Butcher for some reason, and I now know that it wasn't just his acumen in business. He's a very unhinged man, actually. It's what made him very good at breaking people's minds, was because he got total joy out of the slow evisceration of people. And that didn't just stop at work either. The court was at home. I grew up listening to this man talk about himself incessantly, while my perception of him was that he was an idiot, and that he was totally self-absorbed and an extremely cold person, and that he was practically inept in anything but what he did, being talk at or to people with a want to receive acumen, credit, attention, admiration. So yeah, he's a pretty feeble man, really. And this is in my child mind. I was fully aware of this. So the perception of society versus how I saw him was, in reality, was extremely polarized. I always grew up with the threat of, if you upset your father's reputation, which in my perception was I have to keep everything secret for them so that he can be successful. And I was seeing this injunction around legality and honesty and familiarity. And I was saying that the law is a manipulation. And that the perception that he was all-knowing in this situation, being the law man, in perception was very real, but in reality was a total hypocrisy. It was a game of Monopoly, and he was the man with the top hat. So basically, to me it felt like, it was the programming of the breakdown of my presence, of my peace, to subordinate me into becoming a slave to them, slowly but surely, by breakdown of my nervous system and my dissociation. I was living in a 2-story house where my father had a phone line downstairs which he ripped out, so I couldn't use it because it's not my house, it's not my phone. But I was trained to run upstairs for all of his business calls and everything, and I was like Pavlov's dog. As soon as I'd hear the phone go, I'd be up there, and I'd been programmed what to say and all that sort of stuff. And in the meantime, it took me a long time to recognise this behaviour. While even friends watched on and nobody says anything, there's no question, which was really strange. And I've been very aware of people's lack of ability to reach in and ask, which has aided my lack of want for sociability, because I'm really allergic to small talk after all this stuff, and I feel a lot, and I've been through that experience in theory of being around people, because I was disembodied and I was made to sit in boys' schools and then men's schools separated from women, and made to be with these people who are obviously of similar ilk and upbringing and style of upbringing to me. The school was involved in Freemasonry that I went to, the private school. But I became used to playing the game of fitting in, because I had to, because I couldn't get away, and it was just an extension of what was happening at home anyway. I was fitting in, so it becomes pretty endemic to the system, and within that one, the perception is I can't tell anyone about any of this. and I'm not going to sit there looking like a freak. I do need some support. I'm locked in this institution with these people. I'm going to have to take on and adapt and learn all these behaviours to be around these people, while not being able to be authentic about my experience, partly due to amnesia and partly due to a total inability to describe this phenomenon that I'd been experiencing, that in any occasion that I had opened up to, found it was minimised or misunderstood or flipped, or sense of victim would be. And it's a funny thing about the victim call is that when you are a victim, what else is it going to sound like? Don't be a victim. Well, I've never been a victim, but it doesn't mean I wasn't victimised. Yeah? And sometimes we're hapless victims without conceding anyway. So, yeah, perceptions. I was perceiving from a very young age that if I didn't kill myself or somehow escape that place, I was dead anyway. And that was the terror, because I knew that the duration was going to be the killer. And my perception most of the way through is you just have to survive this. That was the mantra. You just have to survive. And the reality, if I was to be completely honest, was you will either have to kill or be killed, or you're going to have to run. And the reality was I didn't feel like I could get away, because I knew they'd find me. And I was quite afraid of what would happen after that. Like, I was already afraid of going to certain places, I feel, having known that something had happened around that area with them or other people. But I have no labels for this. It's just a miscellaneous feeling that comes on very convincingly. At 10 years old, I had the gall, or maybe the courage, and I was still unaware of any other forms of abuse other than the very obvious and consistent ones. But I finally spoke out and asked everyone that I could, who I thought might assist, to take me in while my parents went to Hawaii for a holiday. I don't know many kids who would pass on a holiday to Hawaii. Apparently there was a slippery slide from the top of the building and all that sort of junk, and I wasn't getting on that plane. And a big joke was made out of it because I was unrelenting in my negation of wanting to go. And I'd been vocal enough about it that it was laughed off, and eventually I was left with other people. But in between those times, Mum and Dad used to go away, and they'd leave us with very strange people. My eldest brother, who's now passed, remembers the three eldest being left with biker people early on, which was interesting because I later saw a little bit of that. But yeah, strange people, quite evil people. And also my neighbours had brought in a very strange live-in nanny who was extremely dark, extremely evil, and while they were away, I had the pleasure of witnessing her abuse them, to the point where this other side of me popped out, and I throated her at 10 years old, pushed her up against the wall and told her that she was going to stop me. and that's very rare for me, but it was very primal seeing this. But this is my subconscious working for other people, because I couldn't see myself. I could only see it happening to other people. My perception around me was very broken because there was no answer. I was caught in a void of no answer, and instant dissonance / dissociation, and possible amnesia if brought to extremes. As we got later on in life and I became a bit bigger and more capable, the abuse still carried on in all forms, as I was already emotionally shattered. I wasn't really big on responding in kind. I was more interested in the end of it. But I noticed eventually that the abuse became a bit worse when they knew that there was a potential of me turning. And what I perceived from that was, I couldn't work it out, to tell you the truth. I was still in process around all of that, working out how these things work, these people things. But I realised that what it actually was that made them frightened about me turning was that they knew what they'd done to me and what was in my subconscious, and that what I now realise and understand is that if I was to remember that, they would believe that I would have every right and every want to kill them. And this is why it's carried on. Because deep down they're afraid of what they've done. And my senescence is preferable to their exposure. So that was a really big one. But 13 years old, I finally decided that I'd had enough once they sent me to boarding school. Because I caught myself physically trying to escape and then re-incarcerating myself with all this subliminal knowledge. You know, in between I've had transmissions of life reviews and all sorts of other cosmic stuff coming through in between this, so I'm feeling like an absolute space cadet, even though it made a lot of sense to me. I understood it all. I'd already fully ensconced myself in a word that came to me at about 8 or 9 years old, which was solipsism, which had me questioning whether this whole experience was a play, and I was the only conscious one there. Solipsism, it's a dangerous place, but to tell you the truth, it made a lot of sense in hindsight, because the people that I was receiving reflection from were all actors. They were all part of a narrative, and this is where the Truman Show thing comes in, and the born identity thing. Not that I'm any superhero, it's just that theme of the bullshit story and everybody keeping it going, and a amnesic soldier having to remember who he is and what happened so that he can save himself. It's been very much like that. So 13 years old, I drank a bottle of scotch in one hit, threw myself in the water for the last time, called all my friends over, and I think I was unconscious for a good part of half a day at least, or more. Family doctors back in. I wake up after 18 hours. Fucking had my first conscious near-death experience, and got the choice of whether I wanted to come back here or not. And I stupidly said yes. I'd finally done it. I did it. I'd eaten the desiccant packet they told you not to eat, which was the key out. And I came back into family doctor, and my cold father and my mother looking at me saying, "You changed my menstrual cycle." And I'm like, "Ah, fuck, here we go. It's all about you again, isn't it? Mind if I just re-enter?" So anyway, I was off to boarding school again the next day, and I had a very spiritual experience for the next couple of weeks. That's all it lasted for, because and that's exactly why they put me in the boarding school. But the abuse continued on there, and my light went out again quite swiftly. People were looking at me differently. They saw that I'd had a metaphysical change during my half a day off the earth. And then the abuse continued from the teachers in this boarding school. I became more afraid, as I knew that it was a combination effort between the family and the school, and this is the reason why I couldn't run, because they're far-reaching, these high-end types that join brotherhoods, and women that join covens. So yeah, light went out, and I eventually thought I'd better tell my father that I was being abused by these people, even though I knew I was crossing swords, to see what would happen. And I watched my father go in there, and my mother feigned this, "Oh, I'd never seen him look so frightened in all my life," and I'm just sitting there thinking, "You fucking..." And my father goes in there and apparently revs up the headmaster, right? They leave me in the same. I said, I want to go over there. I don't want to be here anymore. In fact, I didn't want to be there at all. But because I'm a slave, I was choosing another cell, another ward. Anyway, a couple of nights later, I'm reefed out of bed by the back of the neck by the housemaster and the headmaster, and basically stood over and bullied into recanting my statement. That was a success, wasn't it? And this is part of the "you won't get out." You'll do what you're told. You'll show respect, and you'll get none. You'll get what you're given, and you'll be thankful for it. Where are we hearing this now? Yeah. So yeah. Then I get to 18 and have the contract written for me and go and get hit by the Agent Orange, and then look again to see that he wants me to die. He doesn't give a fuck. He doesn't care. They don't care. But so that was my jumping out of school and into the poison pit again. Perception was, I don't matter, I don't mean anything. Reality is here we go again. They're trying to kill me. But because I've got amnesia, I can't fathom that, because I mean, what parent would want to kill you, really? Especially slowly, meticulously, and continuously. So yeah, many years just smoking marijuana, reviewing myself as I then start to learn from my brothers how deformed and defunct they are, while trying to have some semblance of the familiar, because I was too broken to go out in society as I'd been so tortured by this experience that was the only language I now knew. I'd essentially been gagged, and I was carrying the lineage of shame. I was carrying everyone's shame, while they laughed at me and created more. So I'm by this stage I'm not really recognising humanity too much at all. I've become a character. I've worn a lot of masks because I can't be honest and be received. And it's also a threat to be honest and not received. This sort of stuff pushes people away. So yeah, many years up there, working on the nut farm, slaving for my father, doing this stupid industry, which once again I was trying to throw a little bit of entrepreneurialism on, and was shut down at every option, told to do it the stupid hard way, which I've become pretty accustomed to by habit, by these people's inability to have any foresight or inspiration. And I'd spent my whole life with this, especially this inability to open up to women in earnest. And I know that's part of the amnesia that I still haven't fully retrieved. But I do know that there were acts perpetrated on me which were not only sexual, but they were violent, by women, by my mother and my sister and my brother and my father, but the women. There was a terror aspect. There was a joy of splitting me. And I never recovered from that. And I'm still working on it now as I ebb and flow out of recognising love, and also recognising how long it's taken me to achieve this peace. Silence. Without having to interpret another person's nuance. And the one thing I've learnt in my personal experience, and I'm not stereotyping and I'm not dissing anyone, is that for me, narcissism is about obscurity and nuance and suggestion, and so is a lot of a woman's modes of attraction. So it's difficult for me because I haven't been taught the softer nuance of woman, and I would have always been more attracted to a woman who was more open and obvious in her attraction, which would generally lead towards a more narcissistic woman, because the demure nature is a little less prevalent. And then they're off my radar because of the amnesia, because that program's still working of the violence and the sexuality mixed up, and the sprinkling of the word love and affection. And I was about 20 years old, maybe 18, maybe 16, when my mother bald-faced looked at me and said, "You know, some children actually like being abused." I was so dissonant, but I dropped a pin that day. And I said to her, "I beg your pardon, what are you talking about?" But see, this is part of this setting of the environment for the target. Talking about other people, such as was used about the other forms of abuse that were perpetrated on me and told in story about others. It's mindfuck, because there's a portion of the truth and a big portion of the lie. And this is how lawyers work too, ironically. During those years, younger years, I used to go through my brothers and sisters' drawers and parents' drawers, because everything of mine was stolen. Whenever I had anything, anyone could walk in, and I was programmed just to accept. No presents, toys, sports stuff. I'd just take it, and it'd never come back, and there'd never be a word. And all that rage was locked in me and became self-hatred because of the amnesia and my inability to connect to what's fair, because I'd never understood fair, and also a fear of what would happen if I finally got to this treasure trove of trapped emotion and the story surrounding it that got me there. Yeah, so yeah, these shockers, you know. And one time my sister was having one of her episodes, and she seemed to have a morbid fascination with this particular instance of trauma creation where she decided it would be applicable to belt my ankle bones with an umbrella. I remember this vividly as I massaged my ankles on the beach. It's okay, poor things. Forgotten them too now. And this is the non-grounding, same as my brother, smashing me on the top of the head and pinching my nipples all the time and telling me I was going to be ugly and hairy and all this seeding, which was part of the parents' want too. There was no defence. There was only a conversation many years later if I didn't know it was happening, and my response to her was, "Well, why did you become a parent? Why did you have me? If you're not willing to put it in, and you just can let the child be farmed out." And so that was the start of anyway. And this is how I get in the shit, right? Because I'm starting to talk. I watched my father in my 20s seemed to come to a chronic halt in his illustrious business. My strong sensation was that he broke a rule with the Brotherhood because someone was sent in to defame him, and he also had $200,000 extorted from his account from his secretary. You wouldn't notice that, would you? So that's another lie. I'm sure that was a payoff for silence, because he'd probably been having sex with her for many years, along with the boys and everybody else. He's an animal. And so yeah, he shrunk. He turned into a golem. At that point, he was a feeble, disgusting looking thing, still filthy. And that was the last bit of respect I ever had for that man, really. Seeing the implosion of the narcissist and the nastiness, and in between his attempting to suicide with a butter knife, No, it's like, you should have asked me, mate, I would have given you the tip. Now, watching my brother pass away from this mystery illness that seems to impact the high IQ of this family, and we all suffer the same symptoms. Well, both of us did. It all starts to add up between perception, which was the narrative that we were projected at with, versus our conscience, which is the organism fighting itself to not know the truth about the fact that the people who've been punishing you for being less than are the instigators of all the issues, and also the dictators by design of wanting to crush you and ensure that you can't leave while they can get the best out of you still. So it's a form of trauma-based slavery with an option to opt out at any point by continuity, and also by egregious acts to trigger and inflame a wound that they know full well the power of. And I'm flipping around a bit with this. It's funny talking about amnesia, you become a bit amnesic. Remembering the forgetting and talking about it in some sort of synchrony when there was no synchrony because I couldn't remember. My father went into the military and became a pilot for a short while. This is all suspicious too. In his youth, I used to go and check out his coats and stuff because I wanted to see who this dude was. Pretended to be whatever. And so he'd been inducted into the Air Force and flown a plane for a while, which I would have never got in with him. And I'm surprised that he survived that, and I'm not even sure it happened. And this was all in aid of his responsibility as the Queen's choice of the Queen's aid coming to Australia. This is how connected this man was. Up there with the big ones. She never came out to Australia, but it did leak, and I pin dropped that one. So there it was, once again, the perception of this man being an austere, regal, wise lawman, and me seeing the other side, and then seeing his connection to the Queen. Scottish Rite, Freemasonry. So I'm starting to subliminally see that there's a bit of a split in this situation too, where the man who would never have time to do anything like that, as my mother would say when I finally questioned her, I started to learn the language of Freemasonry, which is just lying and being really good at it. Like, they're walking the lie, mate. Yeah, that's why my father was a good lawyer, is because he walked the lie straight into people. Form of possession. It really is. Yeah, it's torture. Cross-examination. Because you know this guy's done it a million times before, and he knows how people's minds work. Had a little bit of help too, of course, because he's a multi-generational Freemason who was abused into the cult himself as part of the rite of passage, rite of the rear passage. 33 steps, 33 vertebrae, at the back door to power, a handshake, the kiss of the ring. It's an interesting call, isn't it? Woo-hoo. Sphincter kisses. So yeah, my perception was still, what's wrong with me? Why do I have all these experiences and thoughts, and why am I shy on society? And the reality was I had every reason to be every one of those things, but I'm giving myself a hard time because I can't be normal. And the mechanism works perfectly because normal people don't like different people. They like normal people. They like things to be predictable. Here we go again. So if things are unpredictable, people might be dangerous to their perception, but also possibly to their knowing. But you never know when you stand back and make a perception over the actual knowing. So this is also how egregores are made. So yeah, in the meantime, going through a number of other betrayals, just feeling the insides of me not understanding the feeling dialogue of betrayal. When it happened, I'd just swallow it and carry on. And I can actually remember watching my family's absorption of my inability to respond as some sort of success. Funny, another one that came along with all of this was an intonation of "you will never be loved" and "you're unlovable." And it's interesting because this theme has carried on through the narcissists that I've encountered since. And this is, once again, understanding how the egregore actually talks, because these people aren't initially connected. They might eventually connect, but not initially. Unless, of course, they've been sent in, which is also a possibility, because there's payment for this sort of work for people too. It's not just a narcissist job for free. There's ones that get paid in organisations to cast spells and to attempt attachment, to feign relationship, to get on the inside. Anyway, I digress. Egregores. What was happening there? 2 seconds, I'll just gather myself. Yes, dying alone. It was interesting because when I encountered my lovely ex-wife and her coven of pedophiles, the overarching theme upon me being extricated and alienated from my children, and my children being poisoned to themselves and me, was "you'll die alone" again. Yeah. When I was accosted by a brother on the beach, he said to me, "You're going to die alone." And I thought, oh, this is thematic. Oh, I've got this. Interesting. And ultimately, within that, in perception, I'm seeing that that's their aim. They've just vocalised it once again. So thanks for that piece of honesty, Fenton, you idiot. And then the next girlfriend I have has also intimated the same thing in a different way, and I went, impressive. This is most interesting. Proof. And that was at another point where I was very close to a breakthrough. I was just starting to reach out again, and of course, by my familiar habit, I happened to manage to pick a practicing witch, which is all part of the training. You know, I've got to understand how deep this goes to understand how deep this goes. I mean, I know that witchcraft's been practiced in my family and others' families already, but I have to have a first-hand conscious experience of this bullshit to know its efficacy, and also the fools that play with it. And that was a rough run, but a great education. And while I wouldn't do it again, I wouldn't change anything about that, because I was actually able to remain present, mainly, while getting a fast forward experience of all of the aches and pains and interruptions and all these energetic things that happen when you're around these types. It's and the more aware you are, or the more aware you are, the more you can deal with it. The more light you have, and the more unconscious you are, the more you're going to cop it, because you're a sitting target. So yeah, right at those stages, you know, having lost everyone, and then a couple of attempts to, oh, that was the other one. I hung out with this lady, foreign lady. She turned up out of nowhere. I didn't want to be around people at this point, and I had to give her a lift to her house because her bike had a flat. Anyway, of course, I attempted to see how I was going with that one too. I never made love with her in 6 months. There was plenty of occasions where it was on, but I felt the game happening. And I'm not led by lust now. Lust was what I was taught was love, and I didn't know that either, which is why I attracted them. But I was able to resist that and watch this thing turn into something else, mate. My God, obsession. Because she said to me, you know, she got on the phone to me one day and said, "You're never going to be able to get me out of your mind." And I'd had a few ciders at this point, and even though it irked me, it was a disgusting feeling coming through the phone. I just laughed at her and just said, "You're probably just going to find that what you've just said is exactly what you're going to feel." She stalked me for a few years, but I know, and I knew from that moment, through my breakdown in my immune system, through my loss of vivaciousness, or the vivaciousness that I was having was being stolen through this manipulation of lust and friendship, and all the stuff that my nervous system was used to in polarity, in sequence, fast, dopamine, adrenaline. And it took me a long time to realise that I'd been adrenalised all my life. You know, when I was 5 and 6, I could slow my heart down and speed it up just by my mind. And after sufficient trauma, shortly after that, I could set my adrenals off just by reliving the situation in memory. So that was the start of my adrenaline addiction, like an ice baby, but in a negative way, in that the body only found it familiar. It wasn't for benefit, it was by impatterning. So there was the primary experience, and then there was the secondary experience of the haunting through the adrenals, and through in the attempt to process, the adrenals would fire equivalent to the situation happening there in the moment. So it was a deterrent to process. Yeah, so what else? Perception. Yeah, so my perception was I had depression for many, many years, even though I was fully aware that I'd been living with assholes. I was so broken that I couldn't really correlate the two, because I'd already acknowledged that I'd been living with assholes. if you know what I mean, in a disembodied state that is processing. It's a fait accompli, you know. You do it every day. It's you're doing it every day. And even when you're not doing it, you're doing it after that, because of the remnants and also the need to back out of the hedge that you ran into and stopped and stayed in because it was too painful to back out. Yeah, so adrenaline really changes perception too, and it changes your options, because if you've got to face adrenaline, you'll be stemming your options by impact of the nervous system in doing this kind of work. And that's why, as I said in a previous video, I knew full well 5 years ago, because I was that I would have to be very patient and be very slow and be very alone, so that I didn't toxify this body with all that I'd kept in every way. The other thing I'll say is, having remembered all this stuff, I'm now aware of the amount of sexual detritus I've carried in my body since I was little from the abuse, and then also the choices in partners I've had since. As I remember, I'm fully aware of their histories and the disgusting things they've been involved in, and how I am now somehow attached to that experience by I want to connect to the garbage bin. So I've spent a lot of years cleaning myself from all of that, and I'm still suffering a lot of confusion around sexuality. I'm not really interested in sexuality, I'm more interested in connection, to be honest. I'm not driven by the testicles. I think that's me putting the horse before the cart in this modern world of convenience and sex before relationship. But yeah, to actually get a review of these women that I've had relations with, and to know what I was actually feeling then, and to perceive that and to be real about it now, knowing that that was just another trauma imposed pattern of reconnecting to the way I was inducted into sexuality in a very ugly and illegal manner, to the point where these people will watch you suffer for a lifetime, knowing exactly what it is, watching you spend your time, your attention, your money, and your patience trying to work out a labyrinth that they know the blueprint of. And it becomes a very tactical battle, this one, for both parties, because one has to remember and the other has to ensure that one doesn't remember, because when one remembers, all hell breaks loose for everyone. They'll try their best to extinguish in any way the truth, which is why I've chosen to start contacting people they know on the outside who've also been hoodwinked, which is another Masonic word, by these people into believing that they are anything but what I've said, which is a traumatic thing to do to people. And here we go again. What hurts more, the lie or the truth? As I already have nothing left to lose, it's no skin off my nose. I'm not getting any support. And these people who have conscience, who've been caught in situations where they're believing the lie, need to be set free. Because the truth hurts for a little while, and the lie hurts for a lifetime. And people's perceptions need to be broken by themselves or others to understand reality. If you look at the way the eye receives light, and you look at Lucifer's sigil, it's the same thing. If you look at a lot of talk about the firmament, if we look at the firmament being the dome over the flat earth, I'm going to go there. It's basically like an eye. The dome is the eye. Everything that's going up onto that dome is reflected from Earth. All of it. The stars. The moon is a reflection of the continents. People don't talk about it. But we're told that there is no firmament, that there's outer space, that we've been there. And this is a reflection, this is a perception, sold a perception, not a reality, because it can't be proven. Because they don't want it to be proven. Because if it's proven, then history is a lie. And why would they lie? Because there's a portion of truth in every lie. And if you can persuade people to believe the lie, they can never be true in themselves. Because there's always a question, there's always a soul inside saying, is that right? I'm not too sure about that. So, even history's talked about floods. And I'll just be logical about this. If we have floods that flood the whole earth, where the hell does all the extra water come from? Theories of relativity. Where does the water come from? How does the whole earth get covered in water? Well, it must come from another source, eh? And then recede back to that source. I wonder where that source would be on a round earth. Good point to leave. When you tell someone a ball is flat and they've never seen a ball, every time they see a ball, you're going to say that's a flat. That's perception. But it's also hiding reality. Have a good day.